Greetings, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Pod Stallions. I am Brian, and with me to my left, way over there, is Jason. How are you, brother?
Hello, everyone. I'm all right. How are you doing?
Very, very well, actually. Things are starting to get better here. Not completely out of quarantine. How about you?
Oh, America is just...
Where'd you go?
No, it's been an interesting week. Let's just say that.
It's been an interesting week. I feel like the backyard neighbor, and I'm just sort of sitting in a chair and going, what's happening? Oh, that's interesting.
You're watching the couple next door that fight too much when they've had a few drinks.
Actually,
and things get thrown.
I do that. My neighbor behind me is. My neighbor behind me is Australian, and he yell talks when he's calm. Like when he's having a good day, he's shouting. So when he's shouting, it's like he's behind me. He's awesome. I just love him to death.
And then you can just sort of like lean back. If you're at the party, you can go, you know what? I think I'm getting a little tired. Got to get up in the morning. You're not leaving, are you?
No, we're not friends. He doesn't know who I am, and I'm gonna keep it.
No. I'm saying we're as America. As Canada America. Watching him. Yes, you can just go. I have to go now. Mm-hmm. I can't do this anymore.
Well, mind you,
yes, I'm fine.
Our clubhouse, our online clubhouse, the Pod Stallions Facebook group, has been a wonderful reprieve from the real world. Would you not agree?
I would, yes. Yeah. I'm paying attention to it. I'm seeing great stuff posted. I don't comment on a ton just because I, get distracted. But it's so fun to see that people are having so much fun with the group and posting really cool, fun stuff. Yeah, it's great.
And this is what inspires this week's topic. Is there's a gentleman who has graciously been sharing his collection of UK annuals, and that is a fellow by the name of Paul Wood. And you and I are both huge enthusiasts of UK annuals, and even though this is not a visual podcast, I thought this would be a lot of fun because it jumps around from so many genre programs. And we should probably explain to the audience what a UK annual is. It is and please jump in and correct me on anything. It is a hardback.
No. Actually, let me do this. Let me do this backwards because I guarantee you'll know more than I do. What I'm just going to say is, this was the kind of thing that reading Doctor Who Monthly, which I get at this one spot in the Twin Cities that I could find at Schindler's, I think it was called. And, all the news that was in there was fresh for the UK, but it was shows that we wouldn't see in America for like another year and a half or so.
Oh, yeah.
But I would see mentions of things like annuals in there and in these mail order places in the UK. I had no idea what they were. I still don't even really know what they are, but I didn't understand what it's a uniquely British thing that is done for everything. But I didn't know what it was, and it was so confusing to me. And then I finally ordered one through this UK catalog where I used to send cash to. I think that's the first. Either I got it from there first, or it was a pen pal that I had in the UK. And I still didn't understand what these things were. I've come to know them better over the years, but you probably have more background info on how these started, what they are. Was Doctor Who the first one, with Hartnell, or tell us what they are.
Well, what they are is a hardback book based on a subject that you would normally get for Christmas. And it ranges from everything from comic books to celebrities to sports. But, the ones we are most interested and obsessed with are television programs. And I think there's a lot of competition for them. They seem to be quite a tradition in the UK, and being Canadian, a Commonwealth country, I grew up with them as well. I didn't. It wasn't really a Christmas tradition, but I wanted to kind of bring up my childhood encounters with them because I think it's kind of amusing, and I don't know where else to share this story except at Pod Stallions, and that is my first encounter with UK annuals were the comic books. I was lucky enough to have been sent as a kid copies of stuff like the Beano and the Dandy through a connection we had as a kid, and I was kind of hooked on UK comics when I was a little kid. They're really great. I mean, they're really fun. They're these weekly comics. And then one day, as a kid, I saw them at a store like the Beano or the Dandy or the Bash Street Kids, I think was my personal favorite, which were characters from the Beano that got their own book because they were so popular. And one of the fascinating things about, pardon me, that's my telephone. One of the fascinating things about UK comics as a kid, my kid logic brain is a little weird. I thought Star Trek was real. There was a thing going on in most of the UK comics were kind of weird and dark. Like they have their own version of Dennis the Menace, which I actually prefer because he kind of is a menace. He's kind of a juvenile delinquent, and then they have other characters called Roger the Dodger and Minnie the Minx. You see the trend. And one of the things that I thought as a kid, like those comics always end with them getting punished by their dad usually. And by the way, all those characters had like the same dad, like gray hair and a mustache, exact same dad, but he would be spanking them with a slipper. And occasionally, like Dennis the Menace or Roger the Dodger would have pissed off or ripped off a bunch of people, and you would see like people lined around the corner, rolling up their sleeves and grabbing their shoe, like, I'm next to spank this kid. And when I was a kid, I thought that in the UK that was just fine. You could just spank random children. And I didn't want to go there. I thought it was a kind of weird place. And the other comic that I remember kind of particularly disturbed me, and I think it was in the Dandy, was one called like The Professor and the Blob. And it was about a professor who had created this life form, and it was this kind of like troll-looking thing with no legs. And every issue, every story was him trying to kill it and failing, because it was like indestructible and dumb. And it was just like that's an odd story choice, for a kid.
Yeah.
And so those kind of warped my brain. But then I'd say it was probably like the late 70s when I saw my first like Tom Baker annual in a store. Like I think I saw it at W.H. Smith. And then it was like, oh, they make annuals for other stuff. And then, I got a few as a kid for Christmas and that sort of thing, like Logan's Run. And then the addiction, like when I started collecting, the first thing you really collect, there's always a used bookstore in every town, is books, right? Like Doctor Who paperbacks were one of my first collectibles. And I would find these at, used bookstores. I'm sure I still could. I haven't in a long time. But they did get fair amount of distribution, so much so that I was at a local flea market, like I'm talking around the corner from my house, and I found the Hartnell, the first Hartnell UK annual for $5.
Wow.
So, that's like, I know I'd seen, there's a lot of ones that I've passed on the years, like there's Bunty for girls and Eagle, and there's even Action Man annuals. I remember in the early 1980s, Shoppers Drug Mart, which is a chain here like Rite Aid or anything, like they got like just stacks of closeout annuals one year, like hundreds of different choices. No Doctor Who, I checked. But, so we did have some sort of pipeline of distribution here, and I was very, very aware of British annuals as a kid, whereas it sounds like you started with Doctor Who, of course, and that makes a lot of sense. I think it's a lot of people's gateway to British annuals. Yeah.
Because it was also, the other thing that people have to remember, and, depending on who's listening and where you grew up, by the time Doctor Who gets to America in '78, as a kid, I'm already fairly spoiled by, the bulk of the things that I'm into have been made into toys. So it's, Migos, Star Trek and Marvel superheroes, DC, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars, of course, Battlestar Galactica, all these things that sort of a movie or TV show came out, merchandise hit, and there was, all kinds of it. So when I finally started to understand that this Doctor Who thing was not, I knew it was British as a kid. I just didn't know if it was new or if it was old or when it was happening. And then as the years went on, you get to the early 80s, there's the only thing that really exists in America are the Pinnacle paperbacks, the reprints, the 10 paperbacks. So by the time I sort of understand that more of what the show is and some of the background and find the magazine, finding the magazine was like, oh my God, all that stuff. My brain sort of, I always tell this story of like being over there in '81 and thinking that when I got to London that I was going to get off the plane and on every street corner was going to be a store dedicated to Doctor Who, and there was going to be toys and play sets and Kenner type stuff. And, and of course there wasn't. The only thing I found on that trip was the TARDIS sutured Easter egg with the Peter Davison in the doorway.
In his electric sex pants.
In his electric sex pants, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it came with rub-down transfers, but I had no idea who Peter Davison was, and I thought it was, I think I might have told this before, but I thought based on the costume and the pictures, I thought that there was another version of Doctor Who there that must have been a kids program, like on Saturday mornings, and he was this other version of Doctor Who, because even the logo was different, because we hadn't gotten the '81 Baker episodes yet. This was at Madame Tussauds. We were at Madame Tussauds, and I saw that entire display, the Tom Baker stuff, the Dalek, and the the Meglos thing, and all that stuff that Madame Tussauds had. And when in the shop, all they had was the Easter egg, in the cardboard TARDIS. So I got that, and then I found the ViewMaster slides. But that was it. That was all there was. So now I'm into the magazine, and I'm finding out more about the show, and I'm still gathering info. But what I'm sort of getting from this and the mail order thing is that there's really not a lot of Doctor Who merchandise. Like there might be some chocolates, or there's some buttons, or there's a tin, or there was
a tent.
But for the bulk of this stuff, when you look in these catalogs, was paperback, Target paperbacks, the Making of Doctor Who, Target book, or the reprint, annuals, the magazines, and that's kind of it. So the annual, I started to understand that the annual was kind of the big, think about this. Here's this show that I was watching something the other day. It was like a making of from 70, about one of the shows in 75 or 76. And they were saying one in 6 people in Great Britain was watching Doctor Who. Yeah. Those numbers are staggering. And yet, the only flimsy thing that was made the entire year was this book that came out at Christmas, this annual. And so there was something really strange about your brain getting around that me thinking that kids in England, Christmas time would come around and, that would be their Star Wars, because it'd been around for so long, and all kinds of stuff under the tree. And really there was nothing. And that's sort of what the show was for so long in collecting stuff. It was all paper goods. It was hard to, when they finally made those metal figures, fine art castings in '84, it was like an action figure line, because there was nothing like, again, for me and from my vantage point, there's no way I would ever get my hands on, the Dennis Fisher stuff or whatever, because that was another planet, back then.
Yeah.
So I figure out what these annuals are, and I start getting a few of them from the UK, and I can't quite get my head around what the hell these things are, because I don't know why it's called an annual. And then the penny dropped eventually, and I figured it out. Oh, it comes out once a year. But it's like, but it was like it had stories, print stories with insane drawings and paintings, which were horrible stories.
Yeah.
Then it might have comic strips, and then it might have some puzzle pages. but it just was like, you just kind of put it down like you think it was like, it was like a show in Russia. Like this was the best merchandise they could do in '82 or something.
The late '70s Tom Baker annuals. You look at some of the art inside, and you're like, what was this guy going through? Like, was he okay? Like the artist himself.
There were also loads of pictures drawings that you see, and you go, that's a shot from the Avengers. He found an image from the Avengers and made Tom Baker look like John Steed, or made, all of a sudden Diana Rigg shows up, and it like this was not a smooth operation where the licensing department of the BBC said, here's what we're doing this year. Here's a bunch of images. And it all makes sense, because I want to get to this, because a lot of this has to do with these annuals being Doctor Who, but we're going to talk about many more titles.
I don't own a single Doctor Who annual anymore.
See, it's funny. I didn't think I did either, but I found a couple of them here that I do still have. But I was watching, I don't know which show it was, I forget. It may have been the Five Doctors or something once, and they had on the DVD they have this 18 minutes of bonus footage. That is the day when, Pertwee and Troughton and Richard Herndl and Davison are all on set together. And it's just 18 minutes, just rough footage. And I swear to God, you're watching this like it is as close to a live broadcast as you can get, because you're lucky if these things were 2 takes. If a boom should get into shot, they jump. Sorry, love. Boom is in the shot. Let's go back to 1. Let's go back. And then have to go all the way back. And everybody had to be in their place, 2 or 3 cameras. And then, okay, moving on. They're lucky if they got 2 takes for each of these scenes. This people forget how little money there was for this show and how fast this crew had to work, and how they rehearsed, I think, for 7 days before they shot a story. I think something like that. But they were running and gunning and going crazy. Well, that to me trickled down to everything related to the show. Everything was just kind of half-assed. It just, and the artwork in these annuals, the one big bit of merchandise for the year, this artwork is just nightmare fuel.
Well, it depended on the company that did it and the year. Like I've owned, over the years I've owned, I used to have a complete run of Pertwee to Baker, and the Pertwee ones are excellent. There's
those are much better.
Comic strips, but then you get to the Baker, and there's not even comic strips. It's just ruddy drawings of Tom Baker in paint, and it's all brown and awful nightmarish colors and
gray and cream colored, and there's no joy in any of them in the 70s.
Have you ever seen that Tom Baker and I think it's Mary Tam, and it's like a pop-out book?
I've got it.
Yeah.
No, I've got the Punch Out and Make It. Yeah,
I've got it. Yeah. And
it's insane.
It's insane. Like, first of all, it's some pretty okay drawings of Tom Baker and Mary Tam, and there's a few that are like Mary Tam should have sued. And then there's a lot of drawings of lizards. Like the artist had an iguana or something, and just like, this is drug.
I'll take it even further. The actual, and I haven't punched it out because it's a vintage thing, but when you look at the instructions aren't even fully there to make the thing. Like if you did punch out the bits, you couldn't finish it. There's a piece missing, or there's something you need to cut out from someone else's newspaper or something. Like it's so half-assed. But you go, there's that footage of Baker when he visits that school. I think he's in Ireland, maybe. That amazing footage of him.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And he pulls out, and because I've got the poster magazine from back then too, from '76, whatever. And he's got like a handful. He's got a couple of poster magazines and something else in this footage that he's given these kids. Well, whichever kids got these, they must have thought they were given a 10-speed bike. Like this is the greatest thing I've ever gotten, because the standards were not that. It just was like kids were happy to get it. It was like Doctor Who. I love this show, but like I don't know. There were articles in the mid 80s, like in 84 and 85. I remember these Doctor Who magazine winter specials where there was one that was dedicated to merchandise. You probably remember this. It had Colin Baker on the cover.
Yeah.
And it was dedicated to merchandise, and it was that and that one issue that listed a bunch of stuff with black and white photos were as close as we ever got to a merchandise guide at that point to know what stuff had been made. And one of them like listed all the annuals and gave the measurements of the annuals and how they weren't uniformly the same size from year to year. In the same company, they'd make them in different.
Anorak.
It's so weird to me. It's like there's no style guide. There's no idea of where this is going.
That's the one thing I wanted to talk about is they are the total Wild West, and I buy a lot of them now. I buy a lot of them blind because I sit there on the UK eBay and I go annual and just sit there and like I don't know everything that's out there, and it's exciting to go, oh my God, they did this and order it. And,
yeah.
They're a bit, as they say, dear to ship from the UK, but lucky me, I have a friend who will, he'll take them all for me and then bundle them up and mail them to me. I don't, abuse this privilege, but I've done it a couple of times. But you get some that have great comic strips in them and fun artwork, and then you open one up and it's just total lunch bag letdown. It's just like crap drawings and that awful board game, and you're done, and a bunch of photos and something.
Well, didn't they also start to do stuff where by the early 80s they started to reprint I think the Battlestar Galactic one might have had part of the comic adaptation in it, or things like that. Like there was less original merch. I mean, less original content for the annual, and half of it might be the actual adaptation.
Well, that's a concept that goes back to like the 50s and 60s. They would do Batman and Superman annuals that were just reprints of DC Comics. In fact, I believe in the introduction to Man of Steel, the trade paperback by John Byrne, he says, Superman first appeared to me in a series of black and white comics in a hardback annual. Isn't that your experience as well? But it's because he grew up in England.
Right.
And you can find those, and the greatest thing about those is they're batshit terrible drawings of Batman and Superman on the covers. Like this artist has clearly never seen Batman or Superman, and
Okay, so wait, so you're saying by the time the first Hartnell comes along in 64, 65?
I think it would be 64. Yeah, I think
because they'd always.
I don't think that was the first annual ever published.
No. But I'm saying by the time that comes along, the annual has been around since the early 50s in the UK?
I think it came around in the 50s, yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, I'm not an expert on but I think I'm only interested in the licensed stuff. And I think the annual stemmed out of the weekly comics and magazines like Eagle and Bunty and that sort of stuff. So I bet you that stuff predates Doctor Who. I'm just going to go on a limb and say there's probably some hardback annuals that
and the other thing too is that they sometimes, maybe correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the let's say the Doctor Who annual for 81 would actually come out Christmas of 80.
Yeah, I seem to recall that.
There was always like a year off kind of, where it was just because it was coming out for the holidays and for the new year, like this. It was basically saying you waited all year for this. Guess what? It's 1981 on the cover. That's all you get for next year. Enjoy it.
The best thing I remember too is the Doctor Who annuals in the early 80s were also reflecting how I was feeling about the show. I can honestly remember picking up the one that had Tom Baker on the cover and a picture of Peter Davison. Do you remember this one? He's like in a circle. And
it's like either.
What's that?
It's like All Creatures Great and Small.
Yeah, it's just some stock photo of Peter Davison.
Yeah.
And I picked that one up, and it had a really dreary comic strip in it. And I didn't I was not a fan of John Nathan Turner's Doctor Who very much as a young man, and now I can, it's hit or miss for me. I've grown to really love the McCoy years, and some of the early Davisons are passable for me, but it's a real mixed bag for me. But I can honestly remember the new Doctor Who the new annuals were in, and this year they were all available at a bake shop in my town, the Scottish bake shop, the Delton British imports. So you got Iron Brew and Tizer and all that stuff there. So it was Saturday morning, and I bicycled down and I went and grabbed the new Doctor Who annual, which had a picture of Colin Baker in his ridiculous outfit on a bridge holding an umbrella. And the rest of the book was pictures of Colin Baker from that photo shoot. It was the most phoned in piece of crap I've ever seen, and it had the notoriety of being the last Doctor Who annual ever produced. McCoy never got one. Paul McGann never got one. It was over.
Yeah, and then they brought it back. Then they started to bring it back when the show came back. But because I have to.
I've never seen those.
Yeah, I'll go into that. But at some point, I'm going to have to discuss the Doctor Who annual for 1978, which is Baker, which I kept because it is, of all of the 70s Bakers, I think this is the most batshit insane. Where there's one drawing or like part of the game board. He looks like Joe Pesci running away. He's
likeness really varies.
They couldn't get Baker's likeness. He's with Sarah Jane. I don't know why he's with Sarah Jane in an annual for 78, which would have come out in 77. But she looks like Vanessa Redgrave.
Even the cover's awful on this.
She looks like Vanessa Redgrave, and you only see her for 2 panels where you see her from the front. Every other panel in this comic strip, you see her from the side or the back, because they couldn't bother. And then on the back, there's an image of him from around 75 or 76, and there's a profile of a woman that isn't quite Louise Jameson, and it isn't quite Elizabeth Sladen, and it's not quite Mary Tamm, and you don't know who the hell it is. It's just insane. So wait,
it's got a helicopter on the cover, Doctor Who is such a big helicopter.
He's in the Persuaders with Tony Curtis and Roger Moore.
And you know what? You know what's funny is some of the art in that is definitely swiped just from promo stills. And one of the drawings, I think it's supposed to be a comic, but it's awful. One of the drawings is the same drawing that they used on that weird TARDIS tin, the bank. It's the exact. It looks like they almost copied that TARDIS tin. Well,
the TARDIS tin. What's freaky about the TARDIS tin is the face of Baker is a photograph,
and the body is a drawing.
And the body is a painting. Yeah. I mean, they didn't even have a promotional shot of him. It's the one item that came out in 1980, for Christ's sake, and they didn't have a photograph of him to put in the door. Or they couldn't call him and say, look, we'll buy you 2 drinks, come to the studio, take some pictures. It just was, nobody cared.
Yeah, so this World Distributors is not my favorite annual producer, and we can get into that. There's different companies that were producing annuals.
Let me ask you this. What's the earliest annual you have, and what's it for?
The earliest annual I have is something a friend gifted to me as a kid, and that is the Countdown annual. And it was his as a kid, and we were little kids, and I don't remember how I got it. And it was a friend of mine named Johnny. It was his birthday yesterday. I wished him happy birthday. Countdown annual 1973. Countdown for TV action. And Johnny was 1 year older than me, so he would have been 4 when he got this. It features, and this is why I've always kept it, it features UFO,
Sweet,
the Persuaders,
nice,
Doctor Who, and I love it, it's Dr. Who,
nice.
They're very, quick to, and they call him Doctor Who. The Thunderbirds are in here, and let me see who else is in here. Autocat and Motor Mouse.
Oh, wow.
And Captain Scarlet. And
so
it's mainly Jerry Anderson, but I mean, I grew to appreciate this more and more, and it kind of warped my brain as a kid because big picture, the comics are excellent, the artwork is great. Countdown, of course, was, I guess, a weekly magazine that featured these characters, but that is the earliest annual I own, and it is beat the crap. All my Beano and Bash Street Kid annuals, I don't know what happened to them. Maybe my nephew got
73? You said 73?
This is a 73. Now, that's not the oldest annual I own. I went on a Jag.
Yeah, what's the oldest one?
The oldest one I own, and I don't remember why. I think I was buying lots from a person, right? And you start to
Mm-hmm.
look through, and they were selling things for £3 and £4,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, well, if I'm gonna pay that shipping, I'm going to go nuts. And this is a World Distributors TV Tornado Annual, and it's from, it doesn't have a name, but I'm gonna say late '60s. So here are the characters you get in this, or the stories: the Saint, uh,
Wow.
the Lone Ranger,
Oh, wow.
Tarzan, and it is definitely supposed to be Ron Ely, the Man from Uncle,
Wow.
Submarine Sea View, not Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, it's a Submarine Sea View,
No
and
relation.
Magnus Robot Fighter. So I know why I bought this, because
Oh, yeah.
the art is really bizarre. The comic art it ranges from like kind of gold key style to is an art student doing this. You know what I mean? Like it's very interesting three color artwork. You know, like everyone's face is red in the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and their outfits are yellow, but it works. You know, it's not
Well,
bad.
I will see your crazy art and raise you from the Doctor Who 1978 annual. There is a strip that's called The Traitor, and it looks like they hired a guy who just dropped some acid.
What
And
year is that?
this is 1978, and he might sort of be having a stroke
Oh,
at the
that's the
same
one
time.
I was talking about. I've seen. Yeah, I can
This
see it right here.
this the stuff in this strip, it clearly meant to be more Louise Jameson than anyone, even though it's supposed to be Sarah.
It's
But
bizarre.
the mutants in it, and even there's at one point it looks like the shit from Dark Star, and there's a guy holding a laser gun that looks like a rocket ship. Like they just took the art of a rocket ship and stuck it in someone's hand and made it into a gun. But this is the kind of thing that if a license, if this sort of got presented today to whoever, they would say, we're going to frighten children if you put this book out. Like, go back to the drawing board and redraw this thing, because you are going to make children want to jump off a bridge.
And speaking of Doctor Who, just I also had as a kid, I found a Dalek annual at like a yard sale, and I can remember I was like, oh my god, like this is the greatest day ever. But it was a the cover was the Daleks shoving people off a cliff.
Oh yeah, I remember.
They're just
I
like
know that.
murdering guys, and you're just like, yay, like.
Yeah, it's well, they were monsters.
Yeah, no,
Um,
they
and
they
it's
were, but it's just I remember thinking like, what a happy cover, even as a kid, like wow.
that art may not, of all the ones I have, that may not be the craziest art. So hold that thought. The earliest one I have is from 1967, and it is the Adamant Lives annual from 1967.
I don't know much about Adamant. That's about a guy who like got frozen in time. Is that the story?
Yeah, he gets frozen in like 1867,
And aren't
and
there
then
two competing UK shows about a guy who gets frozen in time?
there might be, but I only
Yeah.
know Adamant, and it was just one season, and it luckily was one of those shows that they managed to not wipe, and it exists, and there's a great Region 2 DVD set out for it, but it's and Lone Star actually that year 67 68 Lone Star made a cane. I've got the John Steed sword stick that Lone Star made.
Yeah, I'm glad you still have that.
That I've got the header card and it shoots little corks and things, whatever. But they also made an Adamant cane that came with like a signet ring that I think either came separate or you put it onto the cane in some way, or it also squirted water or something. Extremely rare. I've been trying to hunt one down for years, and they never sort of come up. But that's a fun one because it's got some cool strips in it. But this is the kind of thing when you open up the Adamant one, it looks like it's 1967, but it looks like it's a little more uniform. Like you're saying that earlier, the 60s and early 70s stuff was a little more uniform, and the pictures they're more primitive in the sense that they're more clean. there's they look almost like comics from the mid 50s. Some of the drawings,
Yeah.
but they're not insane like when you get to the 70s.
Yeah, they basically used, I think, children's storybook artists to do the comic strips. So you're not dealing with comic professionals.
That's exactly what it is.
And then they sometimes didn't use 4-color printing. They used 3-color printing.
Yes.
So they had to get creative. I do kind of like that. Some of the things that I really enjoy about UK annuals is that you get, like, the annuals never stopped coming, even though the shows were gone.
Well, that's a great. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's an interesting thing where, because they were holiday releases, they had it planned for however long, and here comes Christmas, but the show would have already been off the air. Or in the case of things like, Battlestar Galactica or Buck Rogers, or things that, aired a certain year in America, they aired 2 years later in the UK. And you might have an 81 Buck Rogers annual. But
I'm holding the 1983 Buck Rogers annual.
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember those came to Canada because I saw them in about 84 or 85 at, like, one of those bargain club type stores, where it was like a precursor to Costco. And I went into it once, and they had a dump bin of Buck Rogers 1983 annuals because, the show had been off the air for 2 years here. They were like 99 cents. And I do have one. It is.
See, there you go. That's what I mean. It's like I love that aspect to these, that things like that pop up, and you go, oh, there was an annual for, that he posted that TJ Hooker one the other day. It's like, oh, yeah, there would have been a TJ Hooker one, of course.
Yeah,
because...
actually, Paul posted a lot that I either wouldn't have sought out or don't own.
Yeah.
And I was sort of enjoying that journey because it's like, I've never seen this one, I'm
going to, there's two that I have in this pile that I don't know if we can call them annuals per se. Well, second one for sure, I don't know if we can. But this one I'm going to throw in because it is in a way. They're all mostly reprints. I've got the Amazing World of Doctor Who book.
Oh, yeah.
1996, the Typhoon T tie-in. They had the poster, the cards, and the Amazing World of Doctor Who book, which is just about my favorite art in the history of Tom Baker Doctor Who, is that cover. That's
brilliant, yeah.
I pushed the BBC to use that art on the backing cards for the 8-inch figures.
Yeah, and you got screwed out of that.
Couldn't convince them to do it, but I adore that artwork. It's the best shot of the two, of Sarah Jane and Baker, and all the.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Do you remember when World Distributors, I believe, what was it? They reissued the annuals in an omnibus. I remember ordering from Steve Jeppy of Diamond now.
Yep.
I ordered the, what was it, 25 Years in the TARDIS book, and that book, sight unseen, and that book sucked.
Horrible. Horrible. The cover art was diabolical. The whole thing was fucking horrible.
Yeah.
This one, the Amazing World, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's mostly reprint. Like, there's some of those Dalek strips from the Dalek annuals are in here, but I don't know which other annual stuff was taken from. But, like, there's an article on the Sea Devils with photos. There's an article on the Giant Robot with photos. I don't know if these strips were all reprinted from. Well, there only would have been one Baker before this, or maybe they took from the 75 and 76 Baker. I don't know, but there's a Dalek strip that I'm sure was from a Dalek annual that's in this. But I love it mainly for this cover. I could just look at this cover all day. So that was 76, and then the next one I have is. Well, no, I take it back. I jumped to. I have from 1968. I have the Avengers annual from '68.
Cool. Is that Diana Rigg?
No, this is the one with Linda Thorson on the cover. The last season, the Diana Rigg one, I've never been able to find, for a decent price. But I think there's only one before this, and it's one Diana Rigg, and then this one, and that's it. But in '70, I've got the new Avengers annual when the new Avengers showed up in '76. with Joanna Lumley and Gareth Hunt. So I've got that, and then I got the Doctor Who annual from '78. But the other thing I have that I bet you have, and it is going to be probably in my top 1 or 2 most insane art of the bunch. I have the Star Trek annual from 1978.
Oh, I've got that. I just got that one in the mail.
Okay.
And
So
you know what's
if you
funny is when you
if
open
you
that
open
up.
that spread, when you open it up, that frickin' spread might be the most insane annual artwork.
Do you want to know a secret?
I'd love to know what the hell this is.
Well, I'll tell you right now, it's recycled because I bought that just this past month because it showed up in Canada and the guy offered like $10 shipping, and I thought, turned out the guy was like a little bit anal retentive about everything and kind of drove me mad for a $10 purchase, but I picked it up, and I've done this with annuals a lot. I go to toy shows and I see an annual and I go, I don't know which one I don't have, and I buy it. And I've done that with Star Trek annuals a bunch. They show up a lot at toy shows, and sure as sugar, I've bought many duplicates. Luckily, there's a friend of mine who's a huge Star Trek fan. He runs a local restaurant here, and I just drop them off at the diner counter and leave because he loves Gold Key Star Trek. And but I picked up that '78 book and I opened it up and I was like, oh my god, I have this. And then I went to my my bookshelf and I couldn't find. I don't have '78. '78's a gap. But it turns out they reprinted that, like that's from '75. That weird spread where they're like talking to a wizard or something in the woods.
There is a huge creature on the left side of the panel that is, I don't know if it's part tree. It's got horns coming out of his head. It's enormous. There's some dead wizard type in front of him. He has got his hand over one of the red shirts. There is smoke coming up out of his chest. His shirt is ripped open, and there's like ash and smoke coming up out of his chest. Spock is holding what looks like a power drill, but it's supposed to be a phaser. There's another red shirt that looks like he's holding a futuristic bass, like he's in some tribute band or something. And there's a guy who might be Kirk in a green shirt with a belt around the shirt.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, again, you look at this and you go, what? Nobody cared. Nobody was checking, like, does it matter? Is whatever.
Because then they just put 2 Gold Key comic reprints in there.
Yep, these Gold Key.
The usual fodder of some BS about planets and space. That is always the worst. A board game no one ever played ever. And,
which, by the way, is called Wild Goose Chase.
Oh, yeah. The one I'm holding right now, I'm holding the 1979 Star Trek annual. And the inside cover is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Outfits colors are a little weird. McCoy's wearing a red shirt. They are holding what looks like flare guns, and there's an alien grabbing a woman in a miniskirt who, I think she's supposed to be Starfleet, but like none of them have insignias or anything like that. And the alien's just kind of ridiculous looking. Then again, the book, the magazine is called, or the game is called Escape from the Clinging Dags. And
the Clinging Dags. When you get the Dags, they don't leave.
Well, if you don't want to get stuck in the tunnels of Clack. Which was my band name in college. And
it's worse than the 405 at rush hour.
Here's some humor. There's some humor in here if you want me to read.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear one.
Time to get into the shelters again. These strange Earth people are coming, and it's an alien running from us. There's an astronaut getting out, and his wife's waiting and says, "How was your trip, dear?" "Oh, once you've seen one moon, you've seen them all." Oh, God.
Wow.
Here's my favorite. An astronaut talking to an alien, and he gets out his window and talks to the alien and says, "We're running out of fuel. Where can we get a refill?" And the alien goes, "Earth." Yeah,
see, I didn't see that coming. I didn't think that was going to be the punchline. I'll be honest with you. There's a drawing here. This is perfect. There's a space crossword. And the drawing is what looks like. Do you remember the end of Fantasia with the big devil guy that shows up with his arms outstretched?
Never seen it.
You never saw Fantasia?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, there's a devil type character, and it shows up at some point, and his arms are like outstretched toward the screen, the corners of the screen,
Oh yeah.
basically.
Yeah, I think I've seen
And
that
big horns.
before. Yeah.
So basically, they ripped that image off, and then in front of it is Kirk and Spock. Spock is wearing a light blue tunic. He's wearing a big black belt that goes around the tunic, and then the shirt comes out underneath. Blue slacks, the boots. Kirk has blue slacks, boots, the yellow, light yellow mustard. I think it's them. But around their waist, Spock looks like he's got like a water canteen in a pouch. Kirk looks like he's got a big, bag on the side of his belt that, like, maybe he's collecting minerals or something, or I don't know. So I see that and I go, this is 1978. This show is running all the time in the UK. There's loads of images out there. There's merchandise that's been made. Somebody goes, hey, look, you got the page for the crossword, okay? Okay, what's going on? Well, do a monster, and then Kirk and Spock, and have them do whatever. And then the guy, you look at it and you go, this man's never seen Star Trek.
Yeah, but it's kind of a suitable wrapper for most of the Gold Key reprints, because
it is
the guy drawing the Gold Key comics also had, I think midway through they replaced him, but he also had never seen Star Trek.
But weren't the Gold Key also, like, there was a time frame on that where you go, okay, maybe some stuff wasn't as accessible then in
No, the Gold Key artist lived in Italy, and they
probably never got the show.
No, and they'd send him stills, and you can tell what stills they sent him, because 2 or 3 times in an issue there'd be a close up of Spock, and you're like, yeah, that's that promo still. Like, you can see, and then as soon as Spock has to turn his head, he's a bit off model and kind of
which immediately leads you to think you couldn't find anybody closer than Italy to do the drawings for this.
I actually really like the guy's art.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think it's all charming. All of this, none of this. By the way, none of this is like shitting on this stuff. This is just like, there's something about it, especially, you and I know about licensing and trying to get things made and whatever. When you see this stuff and you go, it was just a different world where it just didn't matter.
That's probably my favorite time in merchandising. I'll give you a case in point. Recently I was tapped, and I won't mention the company name or anything. I was tapped to do a packaging for a toy. And I was unemployed, and I thought, yeah, that'd be fun. Now, I was unable to do it because I'm a designer, but I usually work in InDesign, and I've always been, I won't bore everybody with the details, but I hate Illustrator, and I don't work well with it, and the job was mainly in Illustrator, and I had to kind of go, I'm not your guy, guys. But the underlying thing of it was, I agreed to do it, and they went, here's the style guide. And for those not in the know, I know you know what it is, Jason. The style guide tells you what to do and where, like on a package. Now, they didn't really exist in the 1970s. They kind of started to come into play, I'd say, around the late 1970s. And by the 1980s, they were, the way to do things, especially, like DC Comics established theirs and that sort of thing. My heart sunk when I saw the style guide. Because I was really excited about doing the job, to be perfectly honest with you. I wanted my name on these, these mass market toys. I wanted to be, like, I did that. And then I looked at it, and they had drained the entire creative process out of it. All, whether I did it or some, college kid did it, it would have looked exactly, who'd never heard of these characters, it would have looked, I couldn't put any love or inflection or personality to it whatsoever. It was so rigid. The logo goes here, the character goes here, you use this picture of the character, even though that is not the toy you are making. And, I was completely fine to, they said, okay, we'll just hire somebody. I was like, that's fine, that's great. And it was copacetic, but there was no joy in that whatsoever. Like, I loved the idea of being able to play with vintage artwork and, adding, certain, like, making it pop, but there's no freedom in a mass market item anymore. And it's, I think the time of the annual is probably over. and that makes me sad. Unless you're doing properties that don't really have proper style guides, or they're not completely curated or drained of their personality by their corporate masters. But
Well, I've always thought that there's some kind of, when you look at some of this late 70s, early 80s stuff, there's a real subversive thing going on in some of this stuff, where I think the people that were sort of put in in place of, go ahead and write this story, nobody cares, or go do this thing, no one's going to care. And they sort of went kind of insane and thought, well, no one's going to, I'm just going to write some freak out thing, and who's going to really notice? It's not going to.
There is definitely like a trippy art school vibe to a lot of them. Like I'm holding right now, I have one of my grails, by the way, which is the Tomorrow People annual from 1979.
Wow.
And I love the Tomorrow People. That is it's for those that don't know what it is like Doctor Who if they slashed the budget by a lot. And, yeah, and but it was a great concept, and it was an interesting show, and I liked it very much as a teenager. But the first thing I've noticed is it's got trippy artwork. But the second thing I noticed is, and this is something I wanted to talk about, is when you buy a lot of secondhand annuals, there's people's names in it. It's either like to Jim from Grandma and Grandpa in 1978. Yeah. But this one, the Tomorrow People, when I got it in the mail. I was out on the deck having a drink with my wife, and I opened it up. And there's a guy named Paul. He had written his name and address, and he was 11 years old in 1979, so he's a little older than me. And I decided to look him up on Facebook, and I found him. I found him bam, this has to be him. He's about 50 years old, lives in the same town. I didn't.
Dressed like the Tomorrow People.
Yeah, that was in his bio, Tomorrow People fan. But yeah, I really wanted to, the moment passed after the booze wore off, but I did kind of want to, hey man, do you remember this?
Wait, you did reach out?
No, I didn't.
I wish you would have.
It was just the whiskey talking, but it made me laugh. He
might have had a heart attack. It might have been.
Or he might have been leave me alone, you freak.
Oh, that's funny.
But a lot of them have that in them, and it's kind of.
Yeah, I've got one. The 76 Doctor Who one has to so-and-so, to Ken from so-and-so. Speaking of Ken, I've got the Kenny Everett video show annual for 1980, which is Thames Television.
Is there anything wonderfully ironic in that about, Kenny and the ladies or anything like that?
Yeah, well, here's an example. This is like gossip columns. Or like a soap opera that's coming back, One Tender Summer. The story so far: Alison Fainsworth, after escaping from an orphanage with the help of Vito, a handsome gypsy horse dealer, finally finds acceptance in London's high society with her charming puppet show. While performing one night, she is attacked by her doctor and falls through the stage trapdoor into the Thames and is saved from death by Peter, a trapeze artist who has the plague. After handing her a snuff box containing 6 tiny plastic hands, he is killed by a Jack Russell wearing horn-rimmed spectacles. I mean, that's very Kenny Everett. That's very Python and Kenny Everett, and there's a lot of that in here. The Captain Kremen cartoon that was in the show, which was a staple of the radio show, and then they came out with a comic book in the mid '70s, and then he got the TV show, and they Cosgrove Hall animated all the stories. I mean, that's really naughty. And there's comic strips in this one that are pretty naughty. And then I've got the one from '81, which is also the Kenny Everett video show from Thames before he moved to I think he went somewhere else for the next one. And yeah, it's got questionable, but kids loved him. I mean, he had.
Yeah, I loved him. I loved him too, and it wasn't just for the naughty bits. I thought the show was. I watch it now, and sometimes wonder what did I see in this, but I thought it was the bee's knees, as the kids.
Yeah,
say.
it's just there's something about it that he so clearly doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
who he's going to offend, and he did. He offended a lot of people, and they pushed him around a bit. But he like I've got that Captain Kremen bendy figure, that tall. It's all kind of rotting.
Oh yeah,
now,
the bendy toys. Yeah, they're known for their rot.
Made for kids, and I've got this some pins, like a pin set that came out. So I've got the two Kenny Everetts. I've got the Doctor Who annual from '81. I don't know why I still have this one, because I had a ton of annuals, and Doctor Who, and I sold all of them. This is one that the artwork isn't quite as frightening by the time you get to '81, the inside art, but they still. And this is another thing that's weird, is they changed actors in Doctor Who so much that by the time the annual came out, the companion might be gone, sort of thing. So I feel like that might have been an issue too, partially, or I don't know. Those are like the classic ones that I have.
I can't believe you don't have the penultimate British annual, the one
which is
Holmes and Yo-Yo, 1978.
No. That's the one that, didn't I send you a link and I said, why didn't I know about this?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah, I know I put it up on 5 Awesome Things on eBay, and I can't remember who did it, but someone's like, that's mine, and bought it immediately.
Shit.
And, I really need to know what's behind those covers.
Yeah, someone needs to scan that. If anybody's listening that got that, you need to scan it and put it up.
Every page.
Just to run through real quick, I've got the Indiana Jones annual from '90.
I didn't know that
Which
existed.
was basically, doing the kind of, tying into Last Crusade, but it also had some comic strips reprinted from the Marvel Comics. I've got one from 2009 that came with another book. It's got some freaky deaky artwork. And then I've got the Doctor Who. These are all the ones I have are the Capaldi series. I've got the Capaldi 2015, 2016, 2017 annuals that came out at Christmas time, because I love him so much. So they brought it back. I don't know if Eccleston got one, but I know they brought it back for Tennant, and they did one every year for the show. And so annuals kind of made their way back. They're much more, when you look at them now, they're, talk about a style guide. Like, they're much more, well laid out, and the artwork is
the difference of Photoshop and and
it's just like
caring.
When they got photos of the actual actors that played the actual parts and the actual creatures on set and so on and so forth, and it's all here. So there's something charming about those two, and I sort of love that I kind of love that they brought him back, and just Capaldi is just he's the shit as far as I'm concerned. So I've got those, and then I found one at Amoeba, of all places. Rest in peace, Amoeba.
Well, wait, they're coming back though, aren't they?
They're coming back, but I drove past the location the other day down Sunset, passing all the Humvees with soldiers and stuff, and it was just heartbreaking. It's just the signage is all down, and it's just the marquee up says, see you up on Hollywood Boulevard in the fall kind of thing. But the thought that we're never going to get to step foot back in there, and they never got like a going away or anything, or it's just heartbreaking. But one of the last times I was in, I found a Star Wars annual from 2019.
Weird.
But it's really got cool, sort of the style of the cover and everything is very, very cool, like orange and black. But the reason I got it was on the cover, it has the Millennium Falcon from Solo. And when I looked through it, it was mainly tied into the Solo movie, which I absolutely adore. So I picked that up. So I have that too, and it's from the UK. So somebody brought it into Amoeba and sold it, or traded it in or something.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that the traditions still exist. I do have a couple of Star Wars annuals, one of which is just a reprint of Star Wars.
Now, those were those mainly reprints?
I've never seen one that isn't just Marvel Comics.
Okay.
But the ones like just like the Star Trek ones are amazing, because one year, the 79, there's a 79 annual which is just reprints of the Gold Key comics, And there's also somebody, I think Marvel made a hardback annual of the motion picture that same year, which is just the motion picture comic.
Oh,
So
really?
in '79, you could actually get two different Star Trek annuals, and they were both by different companies as well. Pardon me, I
Oh,
just
wow.
had to move.
So wait, the motion picture one is the motion picture one a reprint of the adaptation? You said?
Yeah, it's just a reprint. And what's really funny is they continued the Star Trek annuals until 1986, just reprinting Gold Key.
No
And
shit.
yeah, I've got a stack of them, and I think in '82 or '83, the cover is Wrath of Khan.
Oh, wow.
But the guts are just Gold Key comics again. And like
the guts are 1999.
and
what?
you look at it and you go like, Gold Key hasn't had the license for this since about '78. Like how do they keep coming out? Like I don't understand how it worked because
You know what? If I know the licensing from back, it's like they probably went, hey, no one's called us. We're still getting money. Like, just keep making, just keep making them.
They obviously sold very well because they seem to go from the early '70s to the late '80s, and there's even an extra one in there. So I'm trying to piece together the entire set because I love Gold Key Star Trek. So I think I've mentioned it a million times. I think that's one favorite items.
Do you have the British Star Trek strip reprints?
I used to have a big box of those comics. I found them in a used bookstore in the '80s.
Because they put those art like in hardback, and they're insane.
Yeah, I love them.
Insane.
Yeah, I love that painted art. It reminds me of the Trigon Empire. I think that's one of the things that's appealing too, is that you get comics in those that never got comics. Case in point, a few years ago, I was at a really crummy nostalgia, / toy show in my hometown, and my friend tagged along. Because you're always willing to go 5 feet to a toy show, even if it's bad. And
yeah.
I don't think I bought anything, but my friend found the Incredible Hulk annual, and it blew my mind. The comics, it's the TV series, Bill Bixby on the cover, and the comic strips are not Hulk comic strips from like the Marvel. They are David Banner comic strips, which you've never happened. There was
just
never.
Like Bixby, just what's he doing? Fixing a shed or something?
Yeah,
he's
he's the drifter coming into town, and these guys bully him, and I think I actually scanned it and put it on Plaid Stallions. Yeah, and he turns into Lou Ferrigno and beats people up, and it was like, wow, there was never anything like that, and the same would apply to my favorite, and I do have a favorite annual publisher, is a company called Brown and Watson. And they put a little extra effort into their annuals. My two favorite annuals of all time are Logan's Run, because they have 2 different comic strips in there of the television series, and they're actually really competent. They feel like episodes of the series. In fact, one of them is kind of creepy, where they go to another city of domes, and it's a cannibal city of domes. And Logan's just shooting people like crazy. It's really cool.
But that's another. See, that's because I forgot when you said Holmes and Yo-Yo, like the Logan's Run too. There's something charming about this too, the whole topic, because they're properties that didn't get merchandise otherwise. Like the Logan's Run TV show didn't get anything here, did it? I mean, it didn't even get a comic book or anything, did it?
Nothing.
Yeah. So like the fact that there's an annual for that short-lived series is like crazy.
Well, but British TV is usually like 13 episodes. So,
right. And it would have big numbers, like them getting an American show that had that kind of budget. That was like, that's why when you see all the clips or you read the articles about Doctor Who in the early 80s, it was up against Buck Rogers. And Buck Rogers looked like Star Wars compared to Doctor Who.
Oh, sure, yeah.
in the early 80s.
And they also put, I think, they put Star Trek up against Doctor Who, and they put Space 1999 up against Doctor Who, and one of the funniest things was, I think Planet of Evil beat Space 1999 in the ratings that
Oh,
week.
wow. Wow.
And Prentice Hancock was the stars, one of the
Yes,
stars
he's
of
in.
Space 1999. He was in
That's
Planet of
right.
Evil.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's his name too? Davros is in Planet of Evil. The guy, without the mask, obviously. Michael.
Yeah, he plays Kashansky or something.
Yeah, Michael
Yeah.
Wisher. That's a weird story too. That's
Planet
like.
of Evil is absolutely one of my favorite Tom Bakers. I think
Yeah.
it's amazing.
He's got that, I've been watching, dipping into some, with everything, and just trying to watch things that I don't want to think. I just want to point on a map and say I want to go there or whatever. Like, I don't want to think about anything, trying to choose something to watch. It's getting too much. So I'll just pop on Doctor Who or something. And man, I know I've said this a million times, but that from his first story right up about maybe some of like Stones of Blood, City of Death, and before he starts to really get bored with it and get over the top, but especially his first two seasons and some of his third season are just, he is so sublime in that part. He is so on the money with every choice that he makes, and it's Hinchcliffe. It's most of it's Hinchcliffe with just those choices, the weirdness and the Hammer horror and the the time. And the Planet of Evil is a great one because I think they left the BBC and shot some of that at Pinewood or somewhere.
Yeah, they built this amazing jungle.
They built the jungle.
Yeah.
And I think it was it James Aitchison was the design, or no, he wasn't the designer. Aitchison did the costume. But some big time guy who ended up doing lots of stuff. But those are
the other thing I wanted to bring up on annuals is short-lived television series sometimes gets 4 annuals, like Planet of the Apes. I still don't have a full set of Planet of the Apes. Each one of them contains comic strips featuring the Planet of the Apes cast, like Verdon and Burke and Galen, which there's very little merchandise. I think Power Records did some Verdon and Burke stuff. And Mego did some action figures and stuff, but and there's a couple of novels. Okay, there's a lot of Verdon and Burke merchandise. I think my point's gone, but there wasn't any comic strips.
you were talking about comic strips. There was when you talk about the TV countdown annual.
Yeah.
There was TV something stars or TV something, and there was also a compendium of
countdown for TV action.
Now Look In, that's what I was getting to. Look In was something that I didn't discover until much later what it was. I didn't quite understand what it was, and once I did understand what it was, I didn't understand why it didn't cover Doctor Who, but it was because it didn't cover BBC shows. It covered like and maybe some Thames or whatever, but that was a thing where they would do a strip. They did a Benny Hill comic strip in that. They did
Man About the House.
Man About the House, like all that stuff was just these crazy strips that didn't get comics or didn't get their own strip, but they were in there. And I remember when I did Bands Reunited. I was a producer on Bands Reunited, and we put Haircut 100 together in London. And I remember one of them. I think it might have been Nick Hayward, the lead singer. So when I was talking to him about Look In one time, he said, we had a comic strip in Look In. I said, what? He said, yeah, with the Haircut 100, we had a comic strip in Look In, and I couldn't find it for years. And then somebody has put up a fan site, and they've put up reprints of all the Haircut 100 adventures that were comic strip adventures in Look In magazine, which is just so cool to me and so trippy. But there was also a comic, like one of those countdown type things that had the Avengers in it. And so I've got the book somewhere, but somebody put together all the reprints of the Avengers comic strips from those comics or magazines, whatever it was. They put them together in one collection.
I recently bought a book. I love the TV show Kung Fu. I've talked about it a bunch, and I put together a book of different. I found a book in Germany of Kung Fu comics, and I thought, oh my God, did Germany make their own Kung Fu comic books? And I ordered one, and of course I can't really read it very well. I don't, I'm not very good with German, but I looked at it and looked at it, and I thought, these are look-in strips.
Oh, I
The art
bet.
style, and I Googled it, and sure enough, I found the look-in strips that I was reading in German.
The look in, the man. When I discovered look in, I got obsessed. I would
Oh
go
yeah,
on eBay.
I have the Logan's Run cover one.
The cover art for those magazines is so brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't just TV shows. This is what made it doubly amazing
like
for
bands.
me.
Yeah.
It was bands like the Jam and Blondie and just all. It just was so cool that they're paintings, they're portraits, and then there's a
really
weird.
Funny is it's like disposable. Like it's weekly. Just
yeah,
like
it wasn't
TV
meant
guide
to. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it just was meant to like read it and toss it and like be done with it. It wasn't. It wasn't meant to.
Art.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So somebody, I think someone might have posted a look in annual in the on our page, and there is a book. I used to have a bunch of issues on their own, but there is a book called Look In, the Best of Look In, Junior TV Times, the 70s, and it's the book that I got. It's got to be 12 years ago or so. I can't see the name of the company here that made it. 2007. I don't know. If you look it up, the Best of Look In. It's just a fun. If you guys don't know what this is, it's just a fun sort of compilation of the best of the stuff that would have been in here in the 70s. Actor profiles or band profiles, and the occasional reprinted strip, and a lot of shows that I've kind of heard of or not heard of or never seen.
A lot of American stuff ends up in Look-In, like $6 Million Man, Kung Fu, Logan's Run. I believe Man from Atlantis had a run.
I mean, when you open this, the front cover, the inside front cover, it's from top to bottom, it's got a bunch of covers, images, inside the book here, and Roger Moore, Cat Weasel, David
Cat Weasel,
Slade, Alice Cooper, Mark Bolan, the Tomorrow People in spacesuits, Gary Glitter. Well, let's not talk about Gary Glitter. Bay City Rollers, Kung Fu. The Kung Fu one is here. The Osmonds, Planet of the Apes, Queen, somebody else. Oh, Tomorrow People got two. They got two covers, I think.
Wow.
Maybe not. Abba. And they got. I think Abba got.
Abba got a bunch of covers.
Yeah, there's a Tomorrow People strip in here.
Oh yeah, somebody posted the Look-In annual. That's right. I think it was Paul.
They fight a giant.
It's got like Martin Landau and Abba, and a guy playing football.
Yeah,
like, they're going for everything there.
Here's a repro ad. Have you seen these great Look-In books? Joining the wide range of Look-In books are 4 brand new titles packed with interest and entertainment. So not only did they print this magazine, they actually did some books. The Flockton Flyer, that might have been a show. The Rolf Harris Animal Quiz book, and we don't want to talk about Rolf Harris anymore either. Sorry, my bad. Don't mention him. Magpie.
You're gonna get into Jimmy Savile soon.
Yeah, Jimmy Savile's weekend plans.
Yeah.
No. Magpie Make and Do book. Magpie was a short-lived show, kind of similar to Blue Peter, kind of like arts and crafts and stuff. But they had an amazing theme tune that was done by Spencer Davis.
No
of
way.
The Spencer. Yeah, and the Runaround quiz book. It's so fun. You just here's the back cover reprints in the back section. Fonzie, $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, Return of the Saint, Ian Ogilvy, Benny Hill, The New Avengers, Logan's Run, Grease, Incredible Hulk, The Jam, The Police, Gary Newman, Paul McCartney, Mork and Mindy, Wurzel Gummidge. I mean, come on. You could really go down the hole getting onto eBay to find these old.
Well, I did. I bought a bunch of them, and actually there was a local UK shop that had stacks of them for some reason. There was nothing in there that I really liked. They were more like like mid '80s, but I bought one or two of those as well. I think I got them kicking around here. But
The first one I think I got was in a trip to London, and it's from '81, and it's got the Beatles on the cover. So
excellent
this is
choice.
not long after John died, and it's got a Beatles strip in it showing how they got started, and then it's got a strip for Chips, and it's got a strip for Wurzel Gummidge.
Yeah.
And it's just a wonderful. I think this is very much like a cousin of annuals. It's also got a listing in back of what's going to be on TV, and one of the things listed is Sapphire and Steel, which is just
wow.
Come on. And this one, Thunderbirds plea. After watching Thunderbirds, I am writing to ask you to put a special feature on Thunderbirds and its characters in Look-In. Most of the children in my street would agree with this plea because we think Thunderbirds is fantastic. Stephen Bate, age 12, West Midlands.
Let's look him up.
He's living around the corner from me.
Yeah. Your neighbors.
Holy shit. The other thing I wanted to mention that isn't officially an annual, but it would be remiss of me not to mention it. In 1974, Michael Palin and Terry Jones, on a break from Python, they had a bunch of material that they weren't sure what to do with it. I don't know how this happened because this company called Methuen that did the Python books that came out in the early 70s. They must have had a deal with them, and they said, "Look, we'd like to make this book." So they put out a book called Bert Fegg's Nasty Book for Boys and Girls, and it basically is kind of riffing.
It's an annual, but it's a parody, right?
It's an annual, but it's a parody. Contents: The Wonderful World of Nature, Across the Andes by Frog, Things to Stick Your Head Into, The Nastiest Thing in the World, yada yada yada. But it's got a lot of stuff that some of it made its way into. Across the Andes by Frog made its way into Ripping Yarns. They did an episode of Ripping Yarns off of it. They have a board game in here. But the cool thing, if I can find, here we go. The mid section, they have something called a cowboy story. A raw country, a raw man, a fast gun on the trail to hell and back. It's called A Cowboy Story, and the art is by Frank Bellamy. They got Frank Bellamy to do 2 pages of art, and it's about it looks like a Western, and then when you get to the second page, Kit Masterson, the fearless cowboy, what brings you here? He's got bronchitis. He was wheezing badly out on the trail. Can you do anything, Doc? It's about his horse getting bronchitis.
Oh, shoot.
So it's very Terry Jones, Michael Palin, it's an annual.
Yeah,
no, it's basically an annual. Yeah.
Since we were talking, I decided to just go onto UK eBay, type in annual, and I go through some of the stuff. And the first thing I want to mention is the earliest one I can find is from 1947, and it is Rupert the Bear. But,
oh, no kidding!
But I just want to tell you that since I started doing this, I have found 10 annuals. Like, I've been doing this for less than a minute. And, they're, like, excluding the British comics I've never heard of, which, I would explain. But let me just go through the list of things that I've found thus far. Rambo got an annual in 1987. I'm sure that's connected to the toy line. American Gladiators. Got one in 1994. It's just called Gladiators in the UK. Blue Peter, and this thing looks like it's from the 50s. 1965. I didn't know Blue Peter got one. Beavis and Butthead got an annual in 1996.
Makes sense, I suppose. Yeah.
Spike Milligan, 1980.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I'd want to get that.
The Muppet Show got an annual. That doesn't. Yep. Fame got an annual in 1982. Fame. I Want to Live Forever, Baby Remember My Name. Yeah, that one. Now, this was the one I remember. Starburst published an annual in 1981. It has Buck Rogers and Popeye on the cover, and it was at my local Kohl's forever. No one wanted it. It's probably still there. I'm just going to go through this because I'm probably going to end up spending money when I do this, but who cares, right? James Bond got several annuals. This is a beautiful Connery cover from 1966.
Yeah, I thought Bond got some.
I remember
Yeah,
I actually bought a bunch in a store, like a used bookstore around here, and I flipped them for really good money.
I
The
think I had a couple when I
Transformers,
had my Bond collection. I think I had a couple annuals from the '60s. Tra-
Karate Kid got one.
okay,
Judge Dredd, that's not a surprise. I remember
Judge
seeing the Judge
Dredd,
Dredd,
huh?
yeah. Um, oh wow, they were holy cow! In 1984, Dr. Spectre, like it was called the Mighty Heroes, but it's like all the Charlton or the Gold Key heroes. Oh my God, not Dr.
Wow.
Spectre, Dr. Solar. I'm going to put a pin on that one. I want that one.
All right.
It just doesn't end. Like we
Yeah, it's there's
Super
something about
Gran.
it. Fuck,
Six
super
Million
great.
Dollar Man. I knew the $6 Million Man got a
You
bunch.
think I find the Cat Weasel one? I gotta have that one.
Electrickery.
No,
Um,
but it is the kind of thing that if you love a show and it's obscure and weird, or it got 6 episodes or one season or whatever, there's probably a chance that there was an annual made in the UK. Like I think part of it has to do with, and this is nothing, we all know how much I love the UK, but if you go back a certain ways, far enough back, not a lot of content. And so an American show could come over that got no love here and suddenly is getting huge numbers for a couple years over there. And it's, I'm sure comparatively, Buck Rogers actually did better in the UK than it probably did in the US on NBC.
yeah, it was a popular show.
You know,
I think Buck Rogers was a popular show in the U.S. too, as I'm not
it
mistaken.
was. It was. It got completely sidelined in the second season, where people just sort
Well,
of.
there was a strike, wasn't there? And it kind of didn't
Yeah,
come
and it
back.
got yeah, and
Yeah.
then it came back on a ship with a campy robot and a campy commander and campy outfits, etc. But
Yeah,
it
I
but it,
thought season
it
two was so badass when I was a kid, and now you watch it and you go, "Oh, this is just stupid Star Trek."
I just can't you can't get your eyes off his chest. Like it's down to the belly button.
Well,
You can see
I
it.
think the thing that there's two things that really bother me about the second season of Buck Rogers, and one is they completely waylay Wilma Deering.
Completely. She's like a stewardess now.
Yeah,
They make
and
yeah.
the second thing is, like, where are the starfighters? Like,
Yes.
Buck is driving this like city bus.
Why are we on a ship?
Why are we on a ship? Yeah, and none of the new characters are any good. Well, okay,
No.
sorry, Hawk is pretty cool.
Hawk has moments, but doesn't he have like a wife who's a drag?
No, she dies in the first episode.
Oh
Uh,
well,
but
he
I
was a
mean,
drag before he died.
yeah, well, and like
Sorry.
Ivan
Sorry.
Asimov is
Sorry,
annoying.
Tom.
Tom-
No, you know what? You know the best. Here's my
Oh
favorite thing.
God, there's a Gary Glitter annual.
Here's the favorite. Okay, yeah. Don't just erase that part of the tape.
Yeah.
The best thing about season 2 of Buck Rogers, bless his heart, is watching Wilfred Hyde White try not to look at the cue cards and read the
Oh
cue cards.
yes, yeah.
Oh, good morning, Buck. Hello, Twiggy. Yes, I heard about it. What was that? And then he turns his head completely to the left to read the billboard that they put up in front of him.
You
And
kind,
he
you kind
turns
of
his
expect him to be sipping
Yes.
coffee out of a world's greatest grandpa mug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the future, and he looks like World War II grandpa in the during an air raid. But it's like the year 4000. But the poor thing cannot get through he's reading the cue cards like and badly. He's sort of
And he's sort of just trudging along. I think being himself.
he is. He's like he doesn't know. I don't think he knows they're making a show half the time that he's there. He's just he thinks he's made friends. They're hanging out, and then he found out many years later that they put it on the air.
I was on
But
what?
I love that, and Dr. Hewer got screwed. Dr.
Well, yeah,
Hewer,
that was like what really
and
I think
Theo, Dr.
when
Theopolis.
I don't spend
Come
a lot
on.
of time thinking about this, but they
Yes,
had a great formula. They had a man
Yes.
from Uncle in space, and it worked on every level. Like the first
Yeah.
season of Buck Rogers is fun.
Oh yeah. Oh
and,
totally.
And then you watch the second season, and they're like trying to be all serious with these stupid plots. The
Well,
the
you got
plots are
that.
bad.
Okay, well, a couple things. You also had, well, first off, you had that ball bag executive producer he ruined multiple shows. What was his name? The guy. He comes in and he says, "We need to get rid of this and get rid of that and put it up on a ship. It's no longer on Earth, and
He
get
was a
rid
guy
of."
like known for westerns. All I remember is I read an interview with Gil Gerard, and the guy didn't know what he was doing. It
He
wasn't.
hated him. Gil
Yeah,
Gerard hated him
yeah.
because he came and just pissed on whatever came before, revamped it. Gil Gerard was trying to say, "You're making a mistake. We got a good thing
It's
going
not
here."
change for change's sake. Yeah.
And then Gil said, "You know what? Screw it. I'm going to the commissary." And then he stayed at the commissary for like the next month. And then none of his outfits from season 1. So they had to give him a lot of loose fitting.
Well, to be honest with you, he was kind of like those outfits looked like they caused pain.
Oh no, he looked good. But he had a body in the first season that was like 70s action man body.
Yeah.
You see him in the Battle of the Network Stars. He's about 9 feet tall, and he is one of the fastest people on the field, on the track and field. Like he's cooking out there.
Yeah.
But something started to happen in the second season where I think he just got miserable with the whole thing, and I think he felt the show was going away, like it was getting ruined, sort of. But it was, but over in the UK, because when I was over there in that same trip, and I originally found the Captain Kremen that I didn't get at the time. I don't know why. But right next to it was the Bendy Toys Buck and Tweaky set that I also didn't get at the time. I found it. I got it years later, and I gifted it to you.
It's behind me right now.
But that was, and I remember seeing it and kind of thinking, oh, so they got that show over here too. Like not really understanding when things hit over there or whatever. And, it was a big show over there. And it was the threat to early 80s Doctor Who, I think. Was Buck Rogers was the big American import that cost a lot of money and had movie-type effects, on these little...
It's absolutely one of my, I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure because I feel no guilt. Guilt is a useless emotion.
No.
I really actually kind of love it.
I think you love it the way. No, I think you love it the way I love Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, I would say that was fair. I never got into Battlestar Galactica, but Buck Rogers has a what's the word? A whimsy to it, and you don't take it too seriously, and it's fun to watch, and the plots are. But they're like Old Man from U.N.C.L.E.'s, but they're set in space, and
what's funny? You made the Man from U.N.C.L.E. comparison. That's actually a great comparison because if you go back and watch, like season 1 and 2 of U.N.C.L.E.,
yeah,
it's a fairly straightforward. They know that kids might be watching. Like, season 1, I think they had those radio communicators that were like cigarette packs. And by 2 or 3, I think somebody said, kids are watching this show. Even though everybody smokes in 1965 or whatever, let's not give them cigarette packs. So they changed the communicator to the pen with the antenna. But by the time you get to like season 3, it starts to get into more silliness.
Oh,
not
absolutely.
Quite,
yeah.
But the first couple seasons are very kind of dark. I mean, they're kind of like people die, stuff blows up, and it's, point blank range kind of thing. By season 3, it gets a little more fun because the color comes in and it's a little more, like Ilya Kuryakin shows up like a beatnik in one where it's like an art. He's speaking.
I think I remember watching one with Sonny and Cher in it.
Probably, yeah. And he's like doing beatnik talk, in the coffee shop and snapping, and he's got a shitty mustache and stuff. But when it started, and to me, Buck Rogers was like that first season it's Battlestar Galactica was. It was people forget that it was like it was half and half. It was only supposed to be half the season. They didn't have the schedule got pumped up. The money was starting to run out. It was like go. We want more shows. And so every time you had one that was dealing with the mythology and where this thing might be going and something more deep, then the next week was Towering Inferno. Then the next week was one that was more in depth. Then the next week was Poseidon Adventure. Like they just didn't have the time to make this show. But what you could see what they were trying to do, where they were trying to go with it. And so it's this weird combo of riffing on existing movie storylines, like High Noon or whatever. He comes to town to shoot a Cylon. And actual dogfights, and Cylons are bad, and intrigue and all that stuff. And Buck Rogers, I think, was like the more fun equivalent of Battlestar. By the time Buck Rogers hit, it was more fun. It was more
freewheeling. It's
more freewheeling. Yeah, very much of its time.
It's sexier too. A lot of beautiful women on that show.
Oh yeah, it was really filthy. Everybody looked at him like they wanted to eat him. Everybody wanted to get with Buck.
There's one where they auction him off, and I'm pretty sure it's Jay Robinson doing the auctioning. Dr. Shrinker and.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, he's very, very flamboyant guy. And it's just they knew what they were doing. Is what
he gets into a hot tub. There's one episode where he gets into a hot tub and you almost see his behind when he lowers himself into the water. Like that. I mean, it's a sci-fi show, but it's a disco sci-fi show. It's very much.
This is an episode where Twiki
doing lines of coke off the dash of his Starfighter.
There's an episode where Twiki's courting a girl Twiki.
Oh,
and she's
I forgot.
She's going booty, booty, booty. And it's like, okay, they knew what they were doing. Like that.
Well, doesn't he say at one point, like, doesn't Twiki say something like get down, get funky, or get down and boogie or something?
Oh, yeah,
it's just so not 25th century. It's just so.
Well, I've always made that joke. Buck is from 1987, apparently. And he shows up in the 25th century. He's like, "Hey, everyone, let's disco dance." And it's like,
let's all swing.
Hey, Buck's a real winner. Buck's real up on stuff.
Yeah. He's trying to loosen up the future because they're all so stiff.
They're also their dancing is kind of lame, but that is one of the classic scenes.
That scene, is that the one where they're like holding the ball or something?
Oh yeah. And
he goes up to the DJ.
They're immediately funky. It's that bad trope of like, let me talk to the band. In 2 seconds of talking to the band, they're completely like Miles Davis.
Play something that's more. I'm like, like this, and then they do it, and he goes, yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, and then everybody just starts to ape his moves, and he's brought the discotheque to the future. It's fantastic.
It's the 25th century because I'm horrible, and then everyone would be horrible as a result. A couple I wanted to just point out that I've just found that I find interesting. Happy Days Annual, featuring the Fonz. I'm assuming that they do not show the guts in the auction. Oh, there's that game. I'm assuming there's probably some Gold Key comics reprinted in there. TV Chimps, 1977. Fun and hilarious adventures of the TV Chimps.
Wait. TV Chimps?
Exactly what you think it is. They have a chimpanzee.
I'm going to stop you right there.
I'm not making this up.
Is it about chimpanzees?
A little bit.
That are on television?
I would assume that is. I don't know. Is it actually a television series?
Holy shit, we can bring this back. Write this down. This is a great idea. Write this down.
I also love that this auction is I love when people take awkward auction photos. Like, this is like, I can see the guy's knees. Like, he's holding it in his lap.
That doesn't inspire confidence for the action.
He's got another one called Sword of Justice. I have no idea. But this one caught my eye. The two Ronnies had an annual.
Oh,
and
well,
it's by
yeah.
Brown and Watson. Yeah. It's got it. Yeah.
Sure, that kind of makes sense.
Ronnie Corbett. I love the two Ronnies. I grew up with them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and Grange Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of Grange Hill. They played that here in Canada.
Yeah.
It's about a school. Grange Hill is a school, and it was another
one.
What's
where his name? Isn't Michael Sheard in it?
Oh, could be. It's another one of those things where the teachers hit the kids in that show.
Yeah, I think Michael Sheard is the headmaster. Michael Sheard was what's his name? Professor Blah Blah's brother on Pyramids of Mars, the one that comes looking for him.
Oh.
And he was in Empire Strikes Back. It's like
Michael Sheard was also in Invisible Enemy. That's right. Yeah, he gets around. He passed away. Oh.
He was Admiral. Was it Admiral Piet?
Yes,
who he was
I believe
in
he was.
Empire.
Yeah.
Came out of Space too fast.
Is
Gave
he
him
on
away.
Grange Hill?
I thought he was on Grange Hill. Maybe.
I don't know. I'm going to look up his IMDb. Because now
Maybe I'm still thinking of Cat Weasel.
I usually have Michael Sheard's...
Maybe I'm thinking of Metal Mickey.
Metal Mickey. Oh, yeah, he was on Grange Hill. He was Mr. Bronson.
There you go.
92 episodes. Wow, Grange Hill lasted a long time.
Why do I know that? I've never even seen the friggin' show. Yeah. Why would I know that? No reason to know that.
Yeah,
Can you explain
I watched
that?
Grange Hill and I didn't know that.
There's no reason for me to be aware of that whatsoever. I think I'm on the spectrum.
Either you might be, or I don't know how you would get rid of that. That's the real shame in all of this is you don't need this information. You want to, but it'll be the thing you remember. And I've forgotten PIN numbers from
It's also the other shame is that there's no way to profit off it. Like there should be a way that this information I should be able to make money off of this.
I'll be standing at a bank machine soon going, Michael Sheard was on Grange Hill for 92 episodes, but I don't remember the PIN.
Got my damn PIN.
Yeah.
The key is to make your code word password Michael Sheard.
1, 2, 3.
And that way you'll never forget your password because it'll be Michael Sheard all the time. Wow. So the Grange Hill. What was the other one you said after Grange Hill? Monkey tennis. What was it called?
TV Chips.
Monkey tennis is better, I think.
I prefer it. TV Chimps is that's got to be a great half hour, whatever the hell that is.
I'm looking that up.
Yeah.
Kidding me?
Oh yeah, me too.
Running out of things to watch during the pandemic. Gotta find TV Chimps.
You know, one of my favorite annuals would be Space 1999, of course. And I just recently picked up this beauty of and I'll probably post it to the group, the 78 Space 1999 annual. So the show is completely gone from, 1978, completely gone from the airwaves. And what this company did was they took the old Charlton comics.
Oh, nice.
And reprinted them, and it's a gorgeous, it's like getting a graphic novel of these stories. And of course they're mixing and matching first season and second season, but there's a gorgeous illustration of Koenig and Maya in the inside, and the cover is probably one of my favorite annual covers. It's really trippy artwork of all the monsters and the eagles and stuff like that, and it's one of those examples. This is World Distributors, the same people who did the Doctor Who stuff, but it is just...
Yeah, it's funny when it works, when some of that UK art works, it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
the look
and the Kung Fu ones are really great too. They are Brown and Watsons, but there's 4 of them. I mean, Kung Fu only ran basically 2.5 seasons, so it's amazing that they got so much of this.
Just think about being this kid. These kids, there would have been Star Wars toys, there would have been stuff in the late 70s, early 80s, whatever. But if this show was getting, I think, like what's the one, City of Death? Didn't it get 16 million viewers?
Yeah, but there was some sort of strike or something. But yeah, I know.
Okay, so let's say 13 million. Let's say even 13 million. That is astounding figures for the late 70s UK. I know there's only 3 things to watch. I get it, but those are big numbers. That's a huge, huge show. That show was incredible to me. That show was the ratings thing that it was, and yet they could not eke out more in the budget. And you could do one big special effects shot of a ship, and then after that you had to get sort of side shots of it and stuff. But Christmas time or whatever it was, and kids would probably want some kind of Doctor Who thing.
Yeah.
It's like, when the documentaries about that great one about, which I think you might have given to me. Sorry, maybe you haven't seen it. The one about 2000 AD.
Oh, I watched it before I gave it to you.
Okay, and Des Skin, the way he talks about kicking off the Doctor Who Weekly thing. And when you hear stories from people like Stephen Moffat or Russell T. Davies or anybody that got involved with the show, what an event that was.
Yeah, because
there was going
took
to
it
be a
seriously.
magazine, a weekly magazine on the shelves for Doctor Who. Everybody that sort of came across it says the same thing, and they went, I didn't know. My head exploded. Like, I couldn't believe this thing. Because there was nothing. There was nothing but a hardcover book at Christmas time that had shitty drawings.
I think if you look, the Doctor Who comic strips were generally handled in like that kind of omnibus. I don't know if Look-In did them, but they were there was some real weirdness going on. Did you ever read about this where they took old Pertwees and just like drew Baker's head over
Drew Baker's
them?
face. Yeah, they drew Baker's face over him. Well, those are the ones. Those are the TV countdown or TV annual or TV whatever. Those weird ones, which I love that whole scene too because they're so weird.
Yeah.
But those ones, they put them together for the Avengers. There's a book. I have this book. It's fairly thin, but they basically it's like having a graphic novel, like you said, for the first time. Because there was one Gold Key or maybe Dell put out one issue of the Avengers comic in '67 or '68 or something, and they never made. That was the only one they ever did with Steed and Emma Peel on the cover.
That, and they had to call it John Steed and Emma Peel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's this reprint of these strips. So when you come across this Look-In stuff or this weirdness, the Kung Fu ones you're talking about, it's like that's as close as you're going to get to a comic strip or a comic book of these certain characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I love all that, or like the ones that have like it's Troughton, but he's always wearing the hat in a lot of those strips.
Yeah.
Like the ones in the annual and stuff. Or there's one famous cover that has like so many. Maybe it's the one you're talking about. Is Roger Moore on the cover of that countdown one?
The one I have?
Yeah. Is he like in a car with other characters?
No, Roger Moore's not on the cover of this one.
There's one that's like there are a bunch of characters in a car, and it's like Roger Moore and William Hartnell and friggin'.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a '60s one.
It's like a countdown type thing, and you're looking at it going, "Oh my God, that's a lot of licenses in one car."
Roger Moore and William Hartnell are going to kick some ass.
So, two of them. Hartnell's going to say, "Hold my hat," and then Moore's going to,
young man.
He's going to flub his line and say, "Hold my blah blah blah." That. I love this stuff. We clearly, there's a weird attraction to this stuff. I don't know what it is, but there's something very nostalgic about it too. I don't look at these things with like just paging through the ones as we were talking, these Doctor Who ones, where I just go, oh my God, this is horrific stuff. Like there's no reason, there's no joy, like you said, in any of these pages. But every now and then there's this weirdness to it where we find these things that didn't get love in any other way, but there's a licensed item out there, for this show.
I think in the last year I've probably bought a half a dozen annuals, and I will continue to do so. I think I picked up V, because that's a show that didn't get a lot of love.
How many did UFO get? One?
No, I think they got about two. I believe 2 or 3 actually.
Okay. Because the Anderson stuff, they must have gotten a lot of them.
They did. They definitely did. The reason I don't own any of the UFO ones is actually I don't know if there's more than one or. Okay, there's only one, and it's all just photos. There's no real. I owned it at one time, and because it was heavily praised in SIG magazine, if you recall that, and Spectrum is Green, the Fanderson magazine.
SIG.
They praised it heavily, but when I got it, I found it kind of boring. Like it's a nice cover, but 1971, yeah, that's the one. But UFO is featured in Countdown, and I have 2. I think I have 72 and I have 73. Both have Pertwee on the cover. Both have UFO on the cover, and
oh
yeah.
Speaking of Pertwee, this 18 minutes of footage of the Doctors together. Boy, man, he was a bit of a D-bag on the set. The way everybody talks about this event, there's 5 Doctors, and he's just Troughton's trying to be loose and goose with him, and he's snapping at Troughton like, "Don't ruin my close-up. Like, don't put something in your mouth. You're going to ruin the scene," or whatever. Because he has a bag of jelly babies, and Troughton's trying to get into character and shit. And then they're on all the talk shows, and every one that they're on this DVD is just so uncomfortable. The three of them are just, Troughton's probably hammered. Davison is just trying to do his best. And Perchme is completely serious. He doesn't see the irony in any of it. He just, he just, and I remember that great story that Tom Baker would tell, that he'd see him at auditions for voiceover things.
Yeah, and he'd wind him up. Yeah. Oh, I just got double that. Yeah.
Make him insane.
You know what? I've actually, like, John Pertwee was very nice to me when I was young.
Yes, of course. He was good.
He's a nice guy, but the funniest thing I ever heard about him was somebody, and I forget who said it, but they were working with him, and they'd never really met him before, and they said, what, the woman said something so funny. She goes, I never pictured him as a medallion man.
It was Janet Fielding.
It was Janet Fielding. Yeah, okay.
She said he was like, John was like, he was like a man's man, like a 70s man's man. And, Janet Fielding is one of the angriest humans that's ever lived, like every interview with her. But she said, he showed up, shirt unbuttoned, medallions, he was a medallion man.
Yeah.
And this is 1983, so it's still, it's right on the cusp of like, are you still doing the medallion thing?
You might not want to stop doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you should.
It left with the waterbed.
But Carolyn John is in this thing. Carolyn John has 2 lines in The Five Doctors. She's so off in the distance, you can't even see her. And she delivered her lines in rehearsal, and she said, Pertwee turned to the director and said, she's not going to do it like that, is she? And she said her heart sank into her stomach, and she went, oh, my God. I mean, think of it. She hadn't seen him since 1971 or whatever. Hey, welcome to – oh, it's so nice to have you back. And she has 2 lines, and he says, she's not going to do it like that, is she? Like, oh, you big, giant D-hole. So that's what it was. It was cringy watching this stuff where he's telling people where to put the camera. He's sort of saying, no, you need to go over there. No, I should be there. Shouldn't I be here? And he's like, he's just in his, he clearly, you watch it and you just go, he knows how important this is. Not just to the show, this is an event, but that he's probably thanking his lucky stars that Baker didn't do it.
Yeah.
That Baker refused it because his part got bigger, and now it's his,
Well, I think it's all summed up in Teeth and Curls, which is a line that doesn't make any sense coming out of his mouth. And years later, you find out he stole it.
He did?
Yeah, he stole it from Sarah, from Liz Slade. She was supposed to say it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I think who. Rounding out our theme, Terrence Dix revealed that.
Terrence
Dix is a little tattletale. Yeah, he took it away from Liz, and it's like,
wow.
It makes perfect sense coming out of Sarah's mouth because she saw the Doctor regenerate. But
and Elizabeth Sladen is just such a, in the interviews and in the footage, she just seemed like the nicest human being that ever lived. She's 1,000% in every scene that she's in, even in the reunion thing. And you could see him sort of, he's barely even looking at her in some of these scenes where it's just like he's there to get as many close-ups as he can, and get out, and he doesn't really care. It's like what the sum of the parts mean. He just wants to, it's kind of cringy. But I'll never forget that Carolyn John saying, she's like, she's not gonna say it like that, is she? As if she's not even there.
Yeah.
In addition, like, oh man. That's bad.
We should wrap this one up, sir.
Yeah, that's a good way to wrap up our annual special.
Crapping on John Pertwee.
Our annual Caroline John special.
Defensive Caroline John. Yeah. Who I adore. So I hope this has been informative. And,
it's different because it's a visual thing, and we don't really do this.
Well, for the visual thing, what I will do is I will start to carpet bomb the Pod Stallions group with some of my annuals from my collection, and I know that this has started with Paul, and we'll add a bunch, and we hopefully can discuss it. We are in Facebook.
Why don't I? I'll snap a couple of random covers and send them to you.
Sounds good.
Like the Adamant and a few others.
That'd be awesome. Because
okay, cool.
I'd love to talk about some of my favorites and gaps in my collection.
Yeah, there you go.
Great. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
We'll be back in a few weeks and with a new, fresh topic. Perhaps you could suggest one to us in our group.
You're not going to say it like that, are you?
Oh. Is it wrong?
I was doing Pertwee.
Oh, I know what you were doing. I didn't know what Carol and John
I
said.
can't believe he stole that line from Liz Slayton. What a ball bag.
You're going to have bad dreams tonight, sir.
Sorry. Apologize.
Wurzel Gummidge is coming for you.
Good stuff, man.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Talk soon.
Take care. All right. I'm going to bounce, sir.
All right, man. Talk soon. Thanks for
always,
recording.
this was a lot of fun. Thanks. I really needed this.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Let's do it soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.